All right, y'all. Welcome to Shop Talk. I'm from InKitchen.com, which is free information online, InKitchen.com, or our YouTube channel, where this and all videos that we do eventually make it up there, and it's all free. And it's all free because of AlphaBroder, Los Angeles Apparel, Hirsch, Howard, Lane 7, Stalls, and LAT Apparel, and this impression show. Here with my buddies here, Stan Banks and Brian Potash, excuse me. And they both run one-man shops, which is kind of interesting.
I didn't even know you were joining.
And a little different perspective. I think, when we say what you're doing right now, Brian's got a one-man shop and he doesn't want to be anything else. Stan's a one-man shop and he wants to rule the world. So, let's hear about the one-man shops, what you got going on right now, and then we'll take it from there.
So for me, I was always a owner-operator. I got in the industry in 2009. All the way through 2020, I did everything. I talked on it earlier, but I did sales, I did the marketing, I did the order intake, I did the shipping and receiving, which is box Jenga in a 2006 Nissan at AlphaBroder long time ago, which was Boduk and Rose before in Philadelphia. And at the end of the day, what I realized, I stopped printing in 2020 because it wasn't much room for me to grow. I didn't know what was possible. I didn't see shops, a lot of shops. I just figured out how to do business, and I made enough to survive. But what I realized after traveling around for the last 2 years, meeting print shop owners, was the fact that, I needed systems and processes if I wanted to stay small. I don't want to have a big shop, but I do want to grow it. In order to do that, it's going to take other people to be involved. But in order to include those other people in what I'm trying to do, I need to have systems and processes in place to run a really, really efficient but small shop. So my goal here over the next 18 months is to build enough business up to the point that I'm at one auto and no more than 5 people. I say no more than 5 people because in my mind that's as big as I want to be. I think that's big enough to serve my local market, running that capacity. And I've seen big print shops where you can't get 2 minutes of the owner's time because one of their 13 autos is down. And, the quality of life, in my opinion, is not very high. So I'd much rather be kind of in a space where we got a comfortable flow, we're making money, and people are taken care of, but ultimately building something now that I could be proud of and that can serve my local market.
All right, Brian, you got something different going on there, and it's been going for a while. So what do you got going on?
Here we go. Hello, check. Hi. So I'm Brian. I'm a little bit more of an anomaly in the print world as I come to it from my degree is in fine art printmaking. Where I focused on silkscreen printing or serigraphy as the fancy terms for it. I guess I've been printing since the early 90s, so over 30 years now. Graduated art school in 96, spent my life savings on my first press, and said to myself, well, I'm going to try and do this. And I'll do it until I have to get a real job. About 17 years later, I realized, well, I've got 2 employees, and I guess this is a real job. The past few years, I've kind of, as most of the world did during 2020, kind of reevaluated everything and went, I think I'm going to scale back a little bit. I had, started to build the business and expand services and pull in more employees, and realized one comment always stuck with me. When I was first starting out, I worked in multiple repro houses around Philadelphia, and when I left, I kept in contact with one of my bosses who was very supportive of that and kind of mentored me through the process. And one thing that always stuck with me was he said to me, after, I guess maybe about a year after I'd left him, He was like, I'm honestly kind of jealous of what he's like, with 30 employees, just the fear and stress and worry of, payroll every week. He's like, you're doing it all yourself? And, I was like, well, yeah.
It's like that when the Rolling Stones are real happy playing the Checkerboard Lounge once. Like, a little simpler days.
Yeah.
So, maybe go over a few things that are really, really great about just like relying on yourself, and some things that are tough when it's just you.
Well, I think the tough part of it is doing everything, right? Like, stuff slips through the cracks. You forgot an order, you forgot this, you meant to go do that, something pops up. I think I wake up in the morning and just like fires. Like, it's like I'm running to the next fire to go put it out, or something with the family happens and you get pulled away and nothing that you meant to do throughout that day actually gets done. So that is one of the things with, or I guess the downside of doing everything yourself. But I guess the benefit is, truly being your own boss is being able to do things you want to do, right? So for a long time, where I say I made enough to survive, I literally made enough to survive. So if I wanted to take a trip and disappear, I made enough money to take that trip, it disappeared. And then I came back, or whenever I ran out of money, I would go print some more jobs. It was like one of those things where I printed to survive and to do the things that I wanted to do. But what I ultimately began to realize, like, this is no way that I can retire off of it. And that is what started to change my mindset, because it's like every day you hustling, you get the deposit, you spent the deposit, you waiting out. If anything goes wrong, you don't really have the money to get the shirts again. So you run into those loops where being the owner-operator of a shop is like, man, how can I clean this up? And you don't ever really know if you're making money, because you're all just in the cycle of going. The same thing his boss said, I couldn't imagine, and this is where I was saying the quality of life is like, I can't imagine having employees and always having to worry about if you're going to make enough money to run the payroll or different things like that. So overall, I think the benefit is being able to do things the way you want to do it. And I think people who have bigger operations, you find them like, man, if I was still small, the quality of life would be a lot different than what you have going on. You kind of drum to your own beat, dance to your own beat. I don't know. I was trying to think of the analogy, but yeah.
So, Brian, what's good? What do you like and what do you not like? What's the tough part of being on your own, and what's the great parts?
Well, the one thing that I always find amusing is, I tell people, what I do, and they're like, "Oh, that must be amazing. You're your own boss." I was like, "No, like every client is my boss. Everybody knows the minute that phone rings, that person expects you to drop everything and take their job as serious, the first thing that happens. So I always, say, it's like, well, I own my own business. I don't really answer to someone higher than me, but I answer to about 40 or 50 different bosses throughout a week.
And the bank.
What's that?
And the bank.
Yeah. For me, yeah, of course, the benefits are with keeping it small and doing your own, you can kind of pick and choose more of the projects that you want to do, as opposed to constantly trying to scrape for every penny that, you see.
No, and you come from an art. You start with the art, so you also get to create what you have in your head. You're not like passing it off to somebody. That must have some gratification, right?
Oh, absolutely. I was talking, there's a job that I got commissioned to do a poster for one of my favorite musicians, Charles Bradley. He was like a 60s style soul singer. When I got the commission, I was like, hey, that's good money. This is going to be great. I then spent over 500 hours drawing and redrawing and then painting or printing a 7-color blacklight reactive on black velvet poster for him. Literally the day before the deadline was due, the Monday morning was the deadline. So I'm at my shop Saturday night at 10 o'clock after spending 120 hours just that week and going, wait, so Charles Bradley is performing downtown, but I can't go because I'm stuck in my shop drawing for him. It's like, I'm getting out of here. If I need to come back at the shop and work till 6 in the morning, I'll get the deadline done. And went to the club. Ended up taking what I was working on, showed it to, got in contact with his tour manager, got a chance to actually meet Charles in person. When I showed him what he did, he broke down into tears, hugging me, saying, I can't believe somebody could portray me as something so beautiful. Did I make a lot of money? No. Had I made $5,000, would it have been great? Sure. 10 years, would I have known what I spent that $5,000 on? No. Will I ever forget a man that I respect breaking down, having such a visceral, emotional response to something that I created? I mean, that's a once-in-a-lifetime chance.
And not only did you create it, but you really made it happen from start to finish, which is, I think, like an ownership that a lot of people never get. You know, like all your projects, you've carried them through from the concept all the way to the actual execution, which is pretty amazing.
And the one thing I found is usually my first idea is the best. I'll rework and do like 7 different sketches and go, no, I had it right the first time.
So Stan, where do you go from here? Like, what's and do you have any fears about when you're going to add employees versus like doing it all yourself?
So for me, it's systems and processes is what I need to focus on. And I think if I do that right, I won't have a problem with adding employees. You know, I think over the years, obviously this whole entire business starts with sales. And so getting the money in the door is obviously the first thing that we should focus on. But really the flow of a small shop is what I've been trying to study. I've been inside of big shops to see how they operate and trying to take things and try to figure out how exactly I can stay small but have a high output enough that will sustain the type of shop that I want to run. So I don't necessarily think I'll have a fear, but I do want to provide a quality of life for the employees that makes them want to stay around, right? Today, I think, you know, I don't know, minimum wage still isn't high where I'm from, but at the end of the day, most people may be happy working for 15, but you still can't get them to show up. So the simplest job of like reclaiming screens may be a $20 an hour job now at this point. And now you think about what that employee is going to have to do in order to stay around, you know, and paying them more isn't always the solution to what's going on. So looking at some of the things that are around here, auto reclaim and just different things and where I can grow to and at what point that I'll need that service or that product or idea to come into life and what I have going on is what I'm focused on. So I'm a student, so as I go around and I talk to people, whether it's other shop owners, like, hey, at what point did you think about this? Or what point did you get here? Or how can I do this a lot better? I think there's an abundance of knowledge around the industry. So for me now, it's just about building it out. I studied it for the last 2 years. I know exactly what I don't want it to look like as far as the life that I had for the first 12 years in the industry, first 11 years in the industry. And now it's about implementing something that I do want to do and seeing it through. So for me, the next journey is that next 18 months of building it out and documenting it for people, you guys out there to be able to follow. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we all got a similar story somehow, some way, you know. Most of us weren't artists like this guy here who can draw and everything. We just did enough to figure out what we needed to do.
So a long time ago, someone said, just because you're alone doesn't mean you're lonely. Is it lonely, though, like working by yourself, would you say, or something that
I love it.
You know, you love it? Okay.
I was laughing with when during 2020, one of my old high school friends was chatting with him, and he's like, "How's everything going?" I was like, "Yeah, not much has changed, man." He's like, "That's the thing." He's like, "You and I, people like us, we've been training our entire lives to not have to deal with society." I love working alone. I currently have an assistant. That certainly makes life a whole lot easier. And one thing I will say is there are other ways to do it other than hiring. I've kind of latched on early on and realized that most art schools, because however you want to spin it, this is an art industry. It's not always treated that way, but you're selling artwork. And most art schools require internships. So I've started, reached out to all my local art schools, volunteered as, being a host and a mentor for students as like an apprenticeship. And I can say the last 3 employees that I've hired have all been former interns, where they work for free for 3 months, you train them, and at the end of their 3 months, I just said, well, I don't feel that our time together is done. Would you like to continue? And they said that would be great. So kept them on part-time through their last year of school, continued training them. Whereas, so then as soon as they graduate, they've got a job, they're already trained, and they're ready to roll and take on whatever you can throw at them.
Yeah, so for me, I think, it's funny, I had a friend who ordered some shirts for his volleyball team that he coaches, and I don't know if you guys get this message. It's like, I need them, and then it's like, they wait till the last minute to pay, and then they need them, and then he's just like, I'll come help you, and I'm like, you're just going to get in the way, man. Like, how are you going to help me do this or whatever the case is? So, I think when you're into the art of anything, you kind of need to be in your creative space. And sometimes you want people around, sometimes you don't. I think the entrepreneurship alone is a lonely journey in comparison to most of what the people do. They don't understand. They think you got unlimited time and unlimited money. And neither of which is true, because, you got 50 people that are now your boss that you're printing for, and you're not making a killing off of printing. But at the end of the day, you still have responsibilities that you need to manage. So I think a lot of like the other relationships in life end up taking a back seat to it. So I have friends that, I got friends that you go drink with, you hang out with, but I don't see them as much as I nearly would have before I went on this journey. They go to work, and when I don't want to talk about work, I'm calling them because we don't talk anything to do about work. But I found a new group of friends that all we do is talk about work, and that's what we're passionate about, and that's kind of where we live. But, at the end of the day, I guess it's lonely. You just got to find a crowd that is into the things that you're interested in, and then it'll take care of itself.
All right. Anything else to say, or should we do some questions?
Questions?
All right. Any questions out there for these guys? So the question is, for interns, how much did they work? How many hours?
That's typically dictated by the college. One of the colleges that I worked with, they required, I think, 60 hours total. So it was usually, and I try and keep everything as laid back and stress-free as possible. And also understand that, look, this is an unpaid internship. You've got your own life, you've got school, you've got your own responsibilities. Like, you tell me when you want to work. And, some people would say, hey, I can only do maybe 3 hours a day, for, the full 5 days, or I can do 8 hours a day for the full 5 days and knock it out immediately. Never once have I had a student not complete their hours, and more often than not, they're coming in through the rest of their time even after they've fulfilled the requirements. One of the other schools was 160 hours. So it really depends upon the college.
I want to add something to that too. When it comes to like things that you may like we're talking about printing and everything like that, but you may be able to get interns for other things that you guys aren't good at, right? If you have a shop, you need social media help, right? And this is something where you can take some students that typically, they need somewhere to practice their skills at, and it's something that you're not good at anyway, and you really won't even have to direct them. They learned everything in school. They just need a place to actually put that working knowledge to rest. We had some students from a high school that came in, graphic designer, super, very, very good, but super, super slow. You got to think about the environment that they're coming from. They might work on a project for an entire week, and here they need to be getting it done in 30 minutes because of the quality of work that we're trying to do versus the art side of it is not as detailed, right? So just kind of like giving them pointers of hey, like, I know you need 3 days to do this, but now you got to try to get it done in an hour. You need to be really down at 30 minutes, but just trying to get them and direct them. It's not as much work and training as it is because they are in school for it. And then also you guys should look at other things, but a digital media area that you can bring in. And now you have a marketing person for your business, and they can bring you some knowledge that you may not even be versed in because they are learning it in real time.
So it's funny, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I got a shop with 20 people and all that. But I started the Ink Kitchen by myself. And when I started it, I just remembered, I had forgotten, I had a team of 4 business school students, and they helped me get it going. And they were like super helpful. They were super excited because at the time it was a very novel thing, sort of give away the information for free but have sponsors. And they were, they had a thing for their resume when they were done that they had helped create this pretty, at the time, very novel kind of approach to using the internet for business and education.
And think about this. Students go through school and they go through lessons. Teacher that don't actually work in the field may have never worked. I think about my graphic design teacher. He was a great artist, but he knew nothing about the digital world. Like, he was going through the book the day before me. I think applied knowledge and being able to be in an environment is the value, right? And obviously you can treat them, you can buy lunch and stuff like that just to make it a little perk where they're not being paid and different things like that. But ultimately, that's a way of paying it forward, right? Charity starts at home, school next to you. They leave college not really ready to go work for anybody, and everybody wants experience. So you're really doing them a service by looking into it and bringing them in where it's truly mutually beneficial.
Other questions out there? How many, I'm just curious, how many of you run a one person or 2 person shop? Yeah, y'all look pretty tired.
And no questions.
You all must be doing a pretty good job, actually, to get away, actually, right? It's tough when you run it yourself to get away. So you've all managed to at least make it here to the show, which must be somewhat of a sacrifice. You might have worked a little extra yesterday, what have you. So good on you that you made it here. Any comments, actually, as...
What was the question? Okay. Say it again.
Not hearing yet.
Yeah, so how do you, the question is, being by yourself, how do you work out telling your customer how long it's going to take to get it done, being that you're the only one there to get it done?
I think overall it's going to depend on how busy you are. Like, I had busier times, and I'm really, really slow to approach. But at the end of the day, I think we should all live by the under-promise, over-deliver. So having a standard turnaround time and, always start with when do you need it, right? Like, when do you need it, and then map that out in your mind. And, if they say they need it in 1 to 3 days, and you got a 5 to 7 business day turnaround, which is kind of typical, then you can map out in your mind what you have going on. And this is the problem. This is where the things become lost in, when you talk about being an owner operator and doing everything. It's like, I'm looking at my work week, all right, 24 shirts. You got to be able to map this out. How long is it going to take me to print? Is the artwork, all of the things that go into it. Get all of that information up front and then see if you can meet their deadline first. A lot of times people's deadline, like, oh yeah, if you're lucky, they need it, I'll need it for 10, 20 days, right? Most people be like, well, I'm gonna push that to the back of the line rather than, but you'll kind of judge that workflow based on that stuff.
Other question, yeah? All right, so the question is that a lot of the big shops online charge more for more quicker service. Do you charge more, and how do you determine that?
I tend to live by the old adage of good, fast, or cheap. Pick two. You know, I can give you fast and good. It's not going to be cheap. But also, I mean, it depends upon the client. It depends upon how they approach me sometimes. You know, if they're dictating, like, well, I need this.
Dictating or a dick?
Yeah, it's like,
Either one.
there's the PETA charge, you know, the pain in the ass charge.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
But, you know, if it's, I tend to work on it if I can do it without working 16 hours that day, or making, you know, coming in on a Saturday when I don't normally open. If it's a good client, you know, I tend to not charge rush jobs unless I know it's going to tax me either physically, personally, or financially.
That's funny. I have a bigger shop, and it would almost be the same thing, really, though. It's if we're going to pay anyone overtime, then we're going to charge, or if they're a pain in the ass. You do have to realize that when something's in a rush, there is more chance of an error, and it's not even a matter of it's going to cost you more to get it done, but just seems like people make mistakes, even if you're a one-person shop, and you probably should charge a little bit more. On a really good customer, we never charge them a rush unless we have to.
You definitely want to have a policy for it, right? And that's where it's like that under promise, over deliver. 5 to 7 business days. Used to be 10. And I've done it a few different ways, and it's literally on inconvenience. Like sometimes if you need it bad enough, I remember being like maybe an hour and a half from home and somebody wanted something done. I didn't plan on coming back, and I'll just throw all right, man, it's going to cost you $300 extra. If you want it bad enough, because it's the inconveniencing factor. But if somebody wants something like in 2 days, and I'm thinking about all of the workflow that goes into it, you know, maybe I will, maybe I won't, maybe I'll go by the policy, but if it's something that I'm delivering to somebody and they know, like, it's on there, you know, all right, and then I can cut you a break. Oh, you only want a dozen shirts, you know, typically I would definitely charge you 50% more than the invoice, and I switched to that because I've seen that being done a lot more. One day is like 100% the invoice, 2 to 3 was I think 50, and then when they had 10 to 5 to 7 was like 25%. And I seen that and I switched rather than like a certain dollar amount. But overall, you just want to judge it based on the inconvenience of the style of job and your workload. So if you got a heavy workload and you got to skip to the front of the line and you got a lot of due dates that they want to hit, then I'm definitely going to stick to that policy. If it's a slow time, I'm comfortable with what I price, that if I just charge that, I'll be fine. But ultimately, if it's inconveniencing me or my flow, then that's something that a space where I definitely want to abide by that policy.
Sometimes we also steer them into something easier. So, you know, it's like we're busy.
I can't do that, but I could get this done.
Yeah, you want one color on a white shirt, yeah, and you want 500 of them tomorrow.
And
Yeah, we
talk
can
to
do
them.
that. So,
And talk to them. I've realized that, you know, if you say to somebody like, well, I need this by Thursday, it's like, okay, well, in order to do that, it's going to be this much more. And they go, oh, next week is fine.
you know, we have a regular customer that would ask for things on kind of short notice, and a factory tour really was helpful. They saw what went into making a shirt, and the guy was a very reasonable guy, and he was like, oh my God, he goes, I'm never going to ask for anything in a hurry again, when he saw what went into it with the screen making and all that. That's a good question. Sure, please. All right, so do we the question is, do you charge a different charge when someone gives you basically print-ready art versus crap that you have to fix? Fair enough, yeah?
So for me, if it's not print ready, you're definitely gonna get an art charge, like a revectoring charge. And I'm not spending hours and I'm marking it up. I'm just, like, I think I did something the other day, you know, and I'm judging that price based on detail because it's a value service. Although I'm gonna outsource it and pay, you know, $10, right? I'm looking at the art. This is 2-color. This has a boy in a background, but a detailed guy. Okay, this is going to be $75. Versus the second piece of art that I got was a clock that was 1 color with some grunge effect. All right, this is $50 because it's like if I could get it done faster based on what I know, it doesn't mean you shouldn't charge for it. So you should definitely, they're not sending in print ready artwork. You should have some standard art fees of what you charge, and you could typically outsource it. If I can't take it into Illustrator, I'm not about to sit there and redraw it, although I can do that. If I can't click a button or use one of the tools to get it and it's clear, I'm just going to outsource that and get it back in the morning and it'll be ready to go. On the other side, high level, I think screen printing fees, screen fees and all of that stuff takes care of the charge for detailed print ready artwork, right? And you should probably, if it's going to be something that's more detailed, you should probably already have, like you have a market carved out, and you should probably already have a premium price for stuff like that because it's not your typical print job. I personally I don't want to print more than 2 colors. I know manual shop, 2 colors. I'm looking for schools, small businesses. That's my demographic. But if you're constantly getting like high detail art, you should probably already be charging a premium. That means you're probably looking into more water-based stuff. It's like a lot more that goes in, Pantone color mixing. You get into that, you're now more of a boutique style printer in my opinion.
I wonder what I was.
For me, it's a little bit different because my business, Devilfish Inc., is graphic arts and printing. So I'm doing I'd say maybe 70 to 80% of the work that we print, I've designed or illustrated. Sometimes it is coming in from the client, but you still need to charge for if you're anything. It drives me insane when I hear people say like, "Oh, we don't charge for logos." It's like, so you're making the print, but you're giving them artwork. You should be charging. Anything that you're working on, you should be charging for.
Yeah, one way or another. I mean, sometimes we have a really big job. It's easier to add a nickel in the job than it is to fight with them about the artwork. So we'll do that, but you got to get paid somehow. The artists aren't cheap.
One of the things that I've seen
Brian.
A shop do is they had a creative team in-house and they separated it off. It depended on how much and style of art, but I thought it was brilliant because, like, hey, we don't do artwork, custom artwork. You have it ready, we'll get it ready for printing. But going to this design firm that we work closely with, which was also just another branded company, same building, same shop, but it was just branded completely different. And he partnered with his graphic designer. It kind of like adds the value where they just expect some art to be done with the shirts. And if it's not a big order, it's not like worth it. At the end of the day, if it's not a huge order, to give the artwork to them. And if you're doing 12 shirts, and you can't spend an hour, 2 hours possibly going back and forth to get them ready with the ideas that they have, you pretty much just lost. I mean, a good graphic designer is at least $25 an hour. You just lost $50 off your job, and that can make a difference over time. And, just waiting for somebody to respond, whether this is good or not, may take some time that you're not considering. And that process now looks like this elongated edits going back and forth. It can be costly to your bottom line not charging.
Just stick with it for a couple years. In about 2 years, you'll just say, fix this art to your computer and it'll fix it. Artificial intelligence will rule the day.
Indeed.
That's a joke. Only a little bit of a joke. Other questions?
Yep.
What are some things you guys are doing to bring in new business?
All right, well, the question is, what are you doing to bring in new business since you're busy in your shop doing all the printing?
I'm always selling. I always say, I'm the world's biggest promotional whore, self-promotional whore, and you have to be. As a small business owner, if you're not pitching yourself and promoting yourself, no one else is going to do it. So
plus, don't you have a lot of breweries and whiskey places? Don't you go out and drinking to sell?
Anywhere I go, it's like, hey, I go to a restaurant, you have wonderful food. Your business card is crap. If somebody handed this to me and said there's a gourmet Mexican place in the middle of the ghetto and handed me this business card, I probably wouldn't go to it. And, the owner will usually go, well, what would you do? I can do this. It'll cost about this much. And, 17 years later, I'm still working with the same restaurant. But at this point in my career, I get a lot of clients just as from word of mouth from other customers of, you need to work with this guy. The work you're getting is not to the level of quality that you deserve. Call him.
At the end of the day, this industry hasn't changed. Like, I think most of the people at this event aren't the people sitting behind their computers trying to run ads to get print shop work, right? Like, we see the customs inks and all of that stuff going on. So, one thing I would really encourage you to do is to give extra, right? If somebody places a sizable order, give them, school, I'll give them a colorway quick. And I want to give the size of the person who does the ordering, right? So I had a sorority order some shirts. They ordered the same shirts like 5 times, sweatshirts, T-shirts, just like a little definition of their sorority. They always ordered it on green, get pink and white ink. So I did a black one, and I gave it to the person who picks it up. I'm like, she might. I asked, what size you wear? I try to guesstimate it. I give her a black one. I just saw her in the barbershop the other day when she was picking up a computer from there, and she's like, they're gonna order them hoodies and or them sweatshirts, and they want them in that color. So give a different colorway if it's a sizable order, or don't be afraid. Like I'm quick. Before I was quick to go to a food truck and say, why you don't got branded shirts on? Your staff doesn't look this way, or whatever the case is. And then another one is like, look outside of just the T-shirt, right? We are doing artwork for businesses. They're going somewhere to get their business cards printed. You could service that. They're getting other pens and promotional items done as well. And sometimes you could just give it something with yours, or you can invest into it a little bit and get something that you can make for them cheap, but give it to them that they can down the road. Don't be quick to look outside of your current customer base and trying to extract more value, because those are the ones you're comfortable working with a lot more than trying to always go out and find new business.
The only other advice I will give big or small business is it's very, very easy to get caught up in production, and then your business is going to go like this. So if you're busy producing things and you think you don't need sales, no sales happens like this. You always plant seeds and they grow later. So you got to reserve some energy and time to prospect for more work even when you're busy, because it will end.
And don't be afraid to be diligent. One of my favorite clients to work with is a tiki bar down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, called the Mai Kai. First time I went down, met them, was like, hey, look, this place is amazing. You've got your own gift shop, but you're selling snow globes that have flamingos in it that say, Florida. Like, you've got people traveling from around the world to come to your establishment. They want to buy souvenirs. Sell them something a little bit more interesting. They like, oh, thank you, but we're fine. Every time, kept talking. 8 years later, finally got the call of, so we would love for you to print this. It's like, okay, great. So don't be afraid to continue. You also don't be too aggressive, but you always got to kind of gauge the person that you're talking to.
Other questions? All right, so the question is like sometimes you're working your butt off and then they're complaining about the work when it's done? Is that it? Like they're in a hurry?
Yeah, they're in a hurry. So I guess it goes to what you said earlier, is like you make mistakes and things aren't quite perfect and they want it in a rush. I would say you got to implement policies. Implement a policy of like rush art, and kind of have some type of disclaimer on what it is that you send to protect yourself. And the people who want things in a rush, they're usually asking a lot of questions and having some problems and gonna push back at the end of the day. But you got to put something in place to protect yourself, and I'm pretty sure you've had a lot of stories in this lane. But
Yeah, and we used to have a sign actually. Bad planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on ours. So they got to realize, it's their fault. But we talked earlier. Maybe you offer them something simpler where you won't make a mistake if they're in such a damn hurry. If they're just demanding, then you got to tell them to screw.
You're probably foregoing like some of the things that you would consider, right? Like, if I got to get this to you tomorrow and I burn the screen, like even if I see it, I may not have another screen coated ready to go that I could, you're going to be foregoing some of that approval process that goes into it, and I've done that in the past a lot. I haven't got bit by it a lot, but at the end of the day, when you're going through a rush process, the policies that you implement, how you talk to that customer is like, you want this done? Okay, cool. Hey, here's the potential, that could go wrong. I may not be able to deliver you exactly 100 shirts because, I got an error rate of 2, it may be 98. 2 may go wrong and I'm rushing, or, these are things that you have to talk them through that may be potentially detrimental to the process going through properly. So just look at some policies and put it on the invoice, or, hey, sign our rush order disclaimer right here. What I mean?
Managing the customer up front is a lot easier than making explanations later. I'll tell you that.
I've recently implemented a cancellation fee for rush orders, because a lot of times, clients will call and say, "Oh my God, my boss needed this. I totally forgot to get it. I need this. Can you do it by tomorrow morning?" It's like, sure. Jump off the phone, start working. They call you 3 hours later and say, "You know what? They decided they don't need it." It's like, well, you needed it in 4 hours, so I needed to go to work immediately. Even if you don't continue the process, you need to pay for the work that has been done, because when it's a rush, it needs to happen very quickly.
Other questions? What do you do with spoilage and damages?
They become rags. No,
You mean what's like a policy, you mean?
Nah, I was going to go deeper. You want to ask the question so it's on camera?
So we have, a spoilage rate that we make very clear. It's like, I think it's a 1.5% per side, something like that, with a minimum. People need to know that. I always say there's either people with like a spoilage rate or there's a liar. So if you want 100 shirts and they give you 100 shirts, there's probably some in there that had a hole or something.
Yeah.
So you got to explain that nobody's perfect. Not the people that made the shirt and not you.
I think also too, if you're a contract printer, then you more so you got to deliver what the customer ordered, right? And that's where that time frame comes in, and you don't want to always print up to that deadline just because they got 7 or 10 days. You don't always want to print up to that deadline. This is something that I have to be conscious. If you got somebody else printing for you, you have to be more conscious of than anything else. So I'm pretty excited that I don't really mess up shirts once I test and do everything there. I don't really spoil a lot of shirts, and I'm like, 100 shirts, no errors, right? Like you run through it in that manner. But when you got other people involved in the process, one, you have to make sure that they can identify them, they don't end up in a pile. At least, and I my mentor, I used to pull shirts out to the side, and I'd be like, "Man, that thing messed up right there." He like, "Man, put that thing in the middle of the pile," right? Like it's for a nonprofit. They go and just hand them out. It's not that big of a deal, but you gotta set what that big of a deal is to you. But ultimately, you gotta leave yourself time to reorder. I don't order extra shirts because then you end up with that big box. I used to sell scrap boxes to my YouTube audience, just because I get these things out. I got a big one now that the youth that I have through the Apparel Academy, they just go through there. They might find some very, very nice blanks in there, just because if you go with the order extra route, you end up with a ton of inventory that you almost can't do any. It's not that you can't, but you almost can't do anything with. But at the end of the day, you got to deliver what the customer asks for. And that's something else that should go into your rush policy. I'm going to order you 100 shirts, but it might be 98 like I mentioned earlier.
Actually, another solution that some people do is the additional shirts to make sure you get to the number they want. They charge less for those. So if they want 100, you make 106, and those extra 6 you just charge for the shirt. No printing like that. But something has to happen. Nobody is perfect all the time, or they're putting in crap. We use him as the example. It's like, and we don't put the crappy one in the middle of the pile.
I don't, but that's what I was taught. I'm like, man, this thing, and it'd be small, but yeah.
Other questions?
I've been printing for a long time, and I have a lot of those extra shirts. Because when people do order rush, I usually order one extra first size, and I guess it never dawned on me to, charge for just the shirt, give them the print, say, hey, thanks for ordering with me. And in my shop, I have bins and bins and bins of nice and clear color, medium,
Yeah, so the question is that he takes these extras and they accumulate.
Yeah.
Like in a big shop, they really accumulate.
Yeah.
So we actually have a solution, and for some cheapskates or some ecological people, we have a thing, we call it color roulette. And so there's an event where we print shirts and they pick a color like gray, I think it was last year, and those shirts cost online $10 or whatever it was, and then the color roulette was like $5 because the shirts are like free, right? We just want to get rid of them, and that went over pretty well actually. Otherwise,
They could become your extra colorway too. So when I was talking about add something else in there, like
Yeah, throw it in for free.
Go grab a sweatshirt out of that pile. They only order T-shirts, maybe black with a couple print. You got a black sweatshirt over there. Grab that, throw it in there. So that way, it may be something that could generate you. All right, it's gonna get cold soon. The weather's changing. Let me throw this in there now. Maybe that organization comes back and gets sweatshirts because one person has one, and now everybody wants it.
mostly though, they'll drag you down. Like keeping track of that stuff, moving it around when you don't have space, trying to remember what you have, trying to label it, all that will drag you down. So you're better off like getting rid of it at the time that the person brought it in. Other questions? All right, these guys are going to hang around for a couple of minutes, so if you were shy and want to ask it in private, they'll be here. How about a hand for Brian and Stan? Great job. Thanks for coming. I want to thank our sponsors because that's why this stuff is free. Los Angeles Apparel, AlphaBroder, Stalls, Transfer Express, LAT Apparel, Lane 7, Howard and Hirsch. I'm from In Kitchen. Check out our YouTube channel. This will be up there eventually too. And that is a wrap for this show. Thank you very much.
How about a round of applause for Rick in the In Kitchen for passing along this information?